Yes, sir.
Uh, um, Wait, is the stream ending soon, or how much time do we have?
Well, depends on what you want to talk about. What do you want to get into?
Okay, so I want to talk about biblical morality specifically. So before I start, I just want to talk about intuitive. I just want to talk about where I base my morality because that's a question usually that you would ask.
Okay.
So I base mine on intuitive morality. So I think people are born with an intuitive morality, and then it is changed or repressed through cultural and propaganda and stuff
What?
like that.
Okay. What is like? What's the intuitive? Just a biological drive? What is the intuitive morality?
Well, I think it's God given specifically.
Okay. What God?
Hmm?
What God?
Well, I'm not. Well, I'm not exactly sure, but what I do want to
Well,
say
how do you
is
know
that,
it's God given if you don't know what God it is?
well, because I think you can get people from all sorts of cultures. So you can get people from every culture, and they would know that murder, lying, and stealing is wrong. They may have different ideas of what it means, but
Well, but what if my God that's intuitively giving me my morals is the devil, and I think that those things are not wrong?
well, I think you would know. But I just want to get to my main argument first. So because my
Okay.
main argument is mainly a critique. So you say that you base your morality on God and the Bible, but
Well, but
then
you said you base your morality on God too, but then you couldn't tell me what God it was. So I'm not sure you're going to have a good basis for a
well,
critique.
yeah, well, because I mean, it is mainly my own. I mean, it might not be a good argument for me because it is a subjective morality, but I
Okay,
want.
oh, there we go. So yeah,
Okay,
so it's subjective. Nice. Go ahead.
but my main argument is a critique of biblical morality. So I would go. Sorry, I don't usually do talks, so I'm a bit nervous. I just want to. Okay, so with biblical morality, when we go back, there's it just seems. It seems like kind of. Oh, my head. Okay, it seems very arbitrary to me. So, for example, when it says that the son won't pay for the sins of the father, but then, for example, in the Bible, God kills all the firstborn sons of Egypt, or when He kills David's son for a sin that David did, or when He tells Abraham to sacrifice his son, even though He stops him, I still see it as like the act itself is basically still done in that way. So, from the way I see it, um, the way I see it is that how can I how can I really worship someone like that when it's just it seems like the morality changes as to depending on what God says. So murder is wrong until it isn't, and like
No, murder is
I don't know.
always wrong. Murder is different from killing. So those are two different things. So murder is always wrong. Killing is not.
So when God orders the Israelites to murder like the children of this or that tribe,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that technically a sin? I mean, I know there's this sense of a collective morality. So if a group does something, they are punished as a group, even though there's members of that group who didn't do anything wrong. So like the infants and the children. And then there's like, was it the book of Samuel? I mean, when God was differentiating between the children and
Mm-hmm.
the infants that are still suckling, and He said, kill them both. And He said, kill all the animals. And then He punished, not Samuel, He punished, was it Saul? King Saul?
Mm-hmm.
Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, he punished King Saul because he didn't kill a cow. He wanted to sacrifice it later, but then He punished him anyway. And I think that was the reason why He replaced him with David, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And then I mean, and then there's other questionable things that God did, like for example with Job, like in the Old Testament, you're constantly promised that if you live a righteous life, God will reward you and stuff. But then Job was specifically punished because he lived a righteous life, because it was this idea he was being tested by God. So I mean, it just seems that whatever you do, you just end up losing in that sense. And with God, it just seems that He's constantly like He says murder is wrong, but then He commits murder on innocent. Like when I say murder, I mean killing of innocents. Like I
Right,
know
but
there's a difference.
the,
I know there's a difference between killing and murder.
well, but the
Like I know
difference
there's
is
just
that right, but the difference is that God has the right to decide when life and death can be ended or when it can be postponed. Right. So in other words, every system will have to have some ultimate sort of linchpin or some ultimate authority by which you say that it's wrong or right. Right. So if God decides that in those cases it is right to do that, in our view, it's not out of accord with the rest of God's morals and his ethics, because God knows infinitely more than we know. And so, like in the book of Job that you mentioned, the thing at the decision at the end is that, well, God says to Job, how are you going to judge when I make these judgment calls if you can't even figure out the created order? How much more would you be able to figure out and understand the uncreated order? So the point is that every system will have to have some point at which you can't appeal any further, right? And so that's where it becomes right or wrong, is not in some arbitrary abstract standard of invariant and personal laws, but in an actual personal being who can make the decisions as to when that is correct and when that is not correct. In other words, God would, for example, know all future contingencies. So had this people group been allowed to live, they might have exterminated the seed of the Messiah. Like, we don't know, right? All of the different contingencies that could have occurred had all of the what we could say are tainted or infected people that lived at that time that had engaged in extremely brutal and wicked practices. So when you read Leviticus, the reason the promised land is cleansed is because the people had become extremely degenerate. And so in God's wisdom, there was a need to get rid of all of that people group for the purpose of the furtherance of the messianic line, that lineage, right? So it was ultimately, it wasn't just because God wanted to just worship the DNA of Jews. It was because they were to present and produce the Messiah that would be the one that would save the world. So to say then that, well, but God is wrong for making decisions as to when it's right for him or for, because if you look at when this discussion comes up in, it's Hannah's prayer. She says, he's the one that rises up and makes others low. He has the right to life and death, right? So he has the power to kill and to heal, right? So in other words, if we're going to say that it's wrong for God to do that in these cases, we need a basis, a moral position from which to say that it's wrong. And I don't think that it's a contradiction to say that in some case, like for example, Exodus says you can engage in self-defense, right? So in those cases, self-defense isn't murder.
Okay, so I mean, my basis is like intuitive morality. I believe everybody is born with that. Like, for example, like you say you need.
But
God
you already
to
said that's
say-
subjective, and you don't know where it comes from. So how is that? That's not going to work as an argument against a.
Well, yeah, I said that before, but honestly, I believe that we all have the same morality. I don't think it's subjective.
Well, you know what? But
because,
even
I mean,
okay,
I
hold
know-
on. But
I
even
know
if that
some-
were true,
yeah.
that doesn't tell us whether it's right or not.
Okay, so for example, I can give a very a specific one where we can't like. So for example, when it comes to rape, like, do you need God to tell you that rape is wrong, or don't you just intuitively
It
know
doesn't.
that it's wrong?
That's not. But that's missing the objection. So the objection is not, like I said to James Sexton, could I, as a secular person, decide to choose the morals of the Ten Commandments without God? Yeah, but that's not. That's avoiding the objection that what's the justification for choosing that? Why do we think that that's true? And if you just say, well, because it works, that's arbitrary. So that's not a good reason to say, well, I can have the morals without the deity.
I mean, I think our intuitive morals comes from God. Now,
But you couldn't tell me
personally,
who that God is or why that's the case. And you can't, just saying that there's intuitive morals doesn't tell me what those morals are or whether that's even right. What if my intuitive morals are wrong?
yeah, I mean, people could be born with different kinds of intuition, but I still think that's slightly better than, I mean, for example, with biblical morality, like when Moses says that you have to kill, what was it? Was it the Midianites, I think? I'm not sure which tribe it was. I think it was the Midianites. When they says, like, you have to kill all the people and boys and whatever, but you can keep the little girls alive and you can, like, have your way with them. Like, if this was, like, a corrupt people and a corrupt blood, in this instance,
God didn't
like,
say you could have your way with the women of the. He said that when you conquered a tribe, there were laws of marriage. He didn't say you could just have your way with them.
Well, it was the virgin little girls of the Midianites, I think. I think that
Yeah,
was
they became they had what they had their hair shorn and they become brides, right? You can't just have your way with them.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. I mean, yes, things like that. And, I mean, with this idea that God just knows everything, so in this idea so whatever God does, it's always correct in that sense. So
Yeah, but I mean it's not inconsistent because that's who is the ultimate standard in our worldview, right?
But, like, if he is the ultimate standard, he could pretty much break all his rules and still say this and then tell people
No,
to do something
that's a
opposite.
Calvinist view. That's theological voluntarism. So no, he can't just do anything and break all of his rules. Right. So for example, God cannot lie, Paul says.
Can God like manipulate or force people to do things that he wants?
No, he doesn't force people to do things.
But he does. Like, for example, with the Pharaoh in Exodus, he hardened his heart.
Yeah,
so
and if you read the other verse, it says how he hardened Pharaoh's heart by letting Pharaoh choose, giving Pharaoh up to his own desires, is what it says. So you're missing the other passage, which explains how that occurs. Are you a Muslim? You sound like you've got like an Islamic sort of Calvinist argumentation going on here.
I mean, no. I mean, I've studied a lot of religions. I mean, I've been raised in a Christian family, but I mean, the closest thing I'll call myself right now would be, okay, no, I actually don't want to talk about it, but no.
Why would you not want to say?
Well,
I mean, if your position's right, why don't you want us to believe it?
Well, because I think people have different ideas of what it is, and what I have an idea of what it is.
Okay, well, what's your idea of what it is? What is it, and what's your idea of it?
Well, my idea of it is mainly, well, some people consider it satanic, but I don't think it is. Like, Hermeticism. Like, okay. I think that we are meant to transform ourselves into, like, good people in that sense, because this idea of turning lead to gold means, like, like from what I've read about it, is you turn good. No, not good. Like you, this idea that through alchemy, personal alchemy. So it's basically changing personality. You become good over time. Like I'm still a layman. I should read more about it.
Okay, and what is the good?
Well, the good in that sense, I think it could relate a lot to the golden rule.
Oh, well, why is the golden rule the good? Sounds arbitrary. Well, hold on. So why isn't it lex talionis, eye for an eye? Why is it the golden rule?
Well, I mean, is there like a good action that you would do that you wouldn't want done to yourself?
You're asking me a question, and I'm saying this is your view. So you tell me why the good is the golden rule and not lex talionis.
Well, the good, golden. Well, well, it is.
You know what? How about this? You think on it, and then come back to the next stream, and then I'll let you back on. I've got to go to a Christmas Eve Western Papal dinner tonight. So, but thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.